But they reside in Spring, Texas.
Yeah.
Yeah. The one.
Yeah, I knew she was from Texas. That I knew.
Spring, Texas. Where's that? Is that?
Close to Houston, I think.
Oh, okay.
Somewhere around Houston. I'm not really sure. Texas has so many cities that it's ridiculous. Little towns.
Yep.
I don't know. I watched what did I watch? The 100-meter race, the women.
Hey, man.
That St. Lucia's girl,
Man,
she
that
killed
girl,
them.
man.
And I
Ate
think,
him up.
and that girl, well, Richardson, I think is her name.
Yeah, Shy
Sure.
Richardson.
Yeah.
Sha'Carri.
Sha'Carri.
She had came in with the fastest time, but that St. Lucia's girl just blew them out of the water. I mean, she got silver, which was
Oh, they
good.
already ran for the finals?
Yeah, yesterday
Yeah.
was the final. Like yesterday, it's weird. Yesterday they did the semifinals, and then a few hours later they did the finals.
Yeah, right.
They did 3 meets of the semifinals, and it was like,
Yeah, because to go into the finals, they had said, "Oh yeah, it's that she doesn't want to
Yeah.
explode or win."
yeah, because they ran against each other in the
Yeah.
second round. I mean, they were the second race of the semifinals, and they ran against each other. And that St. Lucia's girl blew her out of the water there too, and they were like, "Oh, she's holding back because
Yeah.
it's not for a medal." But no, the medal one came in.
Same result.
It's like the one from the relay, the mixed relay.
Yeah.
Oh man, that girl, where's she from? Bowl?
Femke
Ooh.
Bol.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Then,
man. She has a great redemption story.
Yeah.
The which
When
one?
she was in Femke Bol from Norway.
Yeah.
So when
The
they were in
Netherlands, no?
Tokyo,
The Netherlands. The one.
Netherlands. I'm sorry.
The one she didn't
She
they
fell.
But didn't they make a comeback on that one too?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like
Yeah.
she had failed because she was winning in Tokyo. She was winning all the way up, and so like she had maybe like 5 meters and fell
Yeah.
Yeah.
and got up and she got third.
Yeah, the American, she's a teenager.
Yeah.
The one that was racing
Yeah.
this time. And
Yeah.
she was beating everybody. Then all of a sudden you could see this
Yeah,
girl
Femke
coming
Bol.
from the way in the
Yeah.
back.
But she looked like she gassed out
Yeah,
the
she
last.
gassed.
She gassed the
But
last.
that
She
white
was
girl
gassed.
is tall and those legs. I think she could, every stride was about 10 strides of mine.
Yeah, that 19-year-old.
And then boom.
But
She was gassed though, bro.
on that 100-meter, it was interesting because like when that St. Lucia girl was about to run, they were like, "Oh yeah, she's good. You know, she's the." I guess she won some medal. I guess in the worlds or something. And they were kind of like, "Oh, St. Lucia's very excited about her. Who knows? Maybe she'll medal this year."
And look,
She took the gold. They weren't expecting her to blow it out like that.
you know she's
They had-
gonna be a celebrity
they
forever.
they had a Jamaican girl that blew out the third race. But she didn't do that
Nah.
well in the final. But she did good in the semifinals because she beat that other girl from the
But that
U.S.
one,
and the couple
Richard-
other.
Richardson, is that her?
Yeah,
She, last year, I think in the last Olympics, was she in the last Olympics?
it was last Olympics
Well,
she didn't make it.
Yeah.
Oh,
The
okay.
Olympics before that she got disqualified for THC in her system.
Okay, I think around that time she was very cocky. Real cocky.
Well, when she had gotten the THC, she was cocky, and then I think last one too, and then she never made it. And then this year she won the worlds, and she was coming in with the fastest time.
Yeah.
Clean yourself up. Boom. Show y'all something.
Well, I didn't know they had did the final yesterday.
yeah, yeah.
but
I mean, she got silver, so.
Now, who I wanna see.
Simone Biles.
And then I was watching.
Noah Lyles. That's who I want to see.
I was watching that 800-meter. What is it? It was a swimming one. I don't know if it's freestyle.
medley?
or-
Freestyle?
I guess so.
Was
The-
that medley a different kind? Okay,
Yeah, they got to do different
freestyle.
ones. Yeah.
That's a medley. Yeah.
Yeah. And that
Was it mixed,
That
women
girl,
and
that
men?
girl from no, it's just straight,
women?
just one person. Yeah, it was on a relay.
Oh, okay.
I think it was 800 or 400. I don't remember which one it was. Maybe it was 400. But it was that the teenage girl from Canada, McIntosh, is the one that took it. She edged the U.S. girl, but one of the U.S. girls had the lead right at the last 100 meters. She had the lead up into the last 20 meters, and that McIntosh girl passed her up, and she ended up getting the bronze. Then they disqualified her.
Oh no!
Yeah.
Oh no! I saw that race. Yeah, because of her
They said
turn.
that her turn that she
Yeah.
was already
Yeah,
on
yeah,
her
yeah.
belly. She hadn't
Yeah.
finished the backstroke. which was literally inches away. I was like, that's kind of close. That's just really close. I was like, I guess. I mean,
You're nitpicking right
you
there, but
got strict races like that. I
Yeah.
don't know, but
Like
yeah.
those guys that throw that big old ball.
Oh yeah. That guy won
Shot
3
put?
times again.
Yeah.
Third.
Well, there was a guy that beat him. He threw the farthest, the last guy that did it. But they had already put the red flag down because he, when he was going on the spin to throw it, he stepped over. You're not supposed to step over.
Ah,
that
yeah,
thing.
he
He got
fouled.
disqualified.
He got a foul.
That's where that guy won his third.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, man. The Olympics is crazy though. There's a whole bunch of games in there I didn't know. They
Yeah.
got, they actually have break dancing now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm like, what are we doing?
There are some weird stuff in there.
Break
I don't think they
dancing?
should be in there. I will say, last night
Why?
I was struggling to fall asleep, and I finally did fall asleep. I was watching the canoe boat racing.
Oh yeah.
That's nuts. That's
Yeah.
weird.
You got to have some stamina to do that, bro.
Well, but it's one person in each boat, and it's
And
like
they like-
it's whitewater
Yeah,
rafting,
yeah.
and
It's
they're
tough.
like hitting each other. Like, I was just like, dang. I
Yeah,
was like,
it's
I don't know
tough.
how they do it. Like,
Yeah.
and there's so many different rules. I was just looking at them, like they ram each other into the wall. I was like, damn. I was like, all right.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, then they got to do a roll too. Mm-hmm. So they drop you from. It looks like at least 20 feet.
20,
in.
yeah, about like 20 feet.
They drop you. You go in, and then there's one point where you have to go under this thing, so you have to roll under the water. I was just like, wow. I was like, okay.
This is what we do.
It's just like that's
The
nuts.
Olympics.
It's always interesting.
Hey.
Well, welcome to the
Right.
No Name Podcast, episode 97, I think.
97, baby.
We're on
Getting that
Acts
100
chapter
mark.
26. Hit the like and subscribe button. Please pass it along. Hopefully, you guys have been keeping up with us in the Acts episodes. Again, like I said, hit the like and subscribe. Pass it on. The last few parts of Acts has been interesting because it's all Paul's trial case. So if you like a good law and order, like I think Acts 24
Oh,
probably
yeah.
through at least 26.
Yeah, definitely.
We'll give you court case type stuff. You see, going into this, Paul has requested to go to Caesar.
Yeah, you want to go to Rome, right?
And I think the whole thing is he's headed to Rome. You know what was interesting is like I was telling you, which I get mixed. I've been listening to this audio book on the early church from Jesus to Constantine, which I have mixed reviews on it. I think from a factual, historical, it's pretty interesting. From a faith-based, I'm still iffy about it.
Okay.
But anyways, the point being is they said something I didn't realize. When like Paul was going, when he was writing to the Roman church or the Church of Rome, because it was already established, like all the other letters he's writing to churches he established, he calls out in Romans that he hadn't established that church. It was already established. I don't know if it was Peter or whoever. Someone established the church there. But he's writing to them, and I gotta go back and look at it. But the understanding is he was actually writing to them because he was now wanting to spread the gospel western.
Yeah.
So he was wanting to go to like
He had that hidden
Spain and all
motive.
that stuff.
Yeah.
And so that was kind of Paul's whole thing. So even headed to Rome under this thing of Pharaoh, though as you read more of Acts, you realize Paul's already realizing like, or at least from the author of Acts, that Paul realizes he's probably not leaving Rome. You know, when he wrote Romans, that he was thinking he was going to head western. But at this point, you know, Paul's telling his goodbyes to his earlier disciples. And I find it interesting in verse 26. It's something, I don't know. There's something about the faith of Paul and where God leads him in this that I really find interesting, because one of the things you're going to see in here that for me really stood out is King Agrippa actually says, "You're right." He's telling the other person, he's like, you're right. I don't see no fault in him. He's like, I would have told you to free this man
Yeah.
if he hadn't asked to go to Caesar. Like basically they find no fault in him. But again, Paul knew where the Holy Spirit was leading them. And that's one of the things that sometimes is hard, I think, when you're serving God, when you're seeking God. You know, the relationship between God and man has always been a fragile one, you know, especially more so on the man side, right? So from the time of Adam and Eve, you see Adam and Eve both who walked the closest with God, probably from a human standpoint, other than Jesus and a few others. But one of the closest relationship where they were literally walking with God daily. And yet you see Eve and then you see Adam both were able to be filled with doubt for a moment. Whether doubt or questioning, whatever you want to call it, but you know, the whole thing that was able to be them of this question that goes in them that, you know, God doesn't want you to be like him. You know, that raised this question inside Eve, and then Adam went along with it. And again, so the fragile part of the relationship, because the relationship was strong, you push back on those doubts. And I think you see that throughout human relationship. You know, you see that through the Old Testament, the New Testament, through all the people that they write about. You see, you know, Moses had a fragile relationship with God. Every time, you know, God would call him, he had reasons why God shouldn't call him, right? He goes to the burning bush and you see him questioning his ability. Once he's seen all the miracles of God, he still questions God, like why, you know, as they're going through the tormenting of Pharaoh, and then even when they exit, you know, there's several times on, you know, he goes to God and he says, why did you bring me out here with these people? You know, they're your people. And he has these discussions. You see the same thing with David. You know, you see it throughout the Bible.
Yeah.
You know, other than probably Jesus and a few. And here you see Paul's faith has grown like. You see a man who understands he could be set free, but he knows he has a journey that he has to take.
Yeah.
And he's trusting the way the Holy Spirit's leading him. And most of us, if we're reading this, and I bet you even Paul's disciples, if they knew what was going on, they probably would have told Paul, you know, take back your request to go to Caesar. Just be set free. Just let yourself go. But for whatever reason, he knew in his heart that that's where he had to head. And I think that's one of the hardest things when you're doing your Christian walk and you're having this thing. That's the big thing about the personal relationship with God. Like, you're always going to have confirmation with other people, but you're going to always have to be that one that has that relationship with it and then trust it, you know, when you're having to make the decisions. And I think that's one of the hardest things. Like, I think from what I take away from this in the last few chapters is that personal relationship with God.
Yeah.
Because a lot of us, we don't want to be accountable for our personal relationship. We'd rather our pastors, our preachers, and things like that be accountable for our relationship. So we have someone to blame. You know,
Not really though.
But that's the way. That's not the way it should be. But I feel like that's the way our society has become. You know, most of us, when we have there's one thing to seek guidance, but there's another when you're seeking for someone to make the decision for you.
And that's the problem, man.
And Paul wasn't looking for someone to make the decision for him. He sought guidance, but he never. He sought the Lord in making the decision. I think that's sometimes what you have happen in a lot of churches and stuff like that. You know, people tend to go to pastors, preachers, and stuff like that, and they want them to give them the answers instead of giving them the guidance. Instead of if a pastor tells you, you know what, you really here's the guidance. You both need to seek God and pray on it, and God will lead you to the right answers. Most people don't want that. What they want is, tell me who's right and wrong. Tell me how to fix this.
Yeah.
Tell me the 5 steps I need to take to do this.
Yeah.
And no one wants to hear, really, you need to seek God and God's going to guide you.
Yeah.
Like, you can give some general, don't get me wrong, that doesn't mean you don't give guidance, right? You sometimes tell them, hey, maybe you need to step aside, write stuff down. Like, you can give those, but the ultimate decision on things, like, I don't know, whether it's a finance, whether it's marriage, divorce, whatever it is, people always want someone to make the decision for them instead of them going and seeking the Lord and saying, okay, God, what do I need to do here?
And that's true, but I believe you can give the answer to people, but people want you to do the answer for them. See? And because sometimes you know, they ask a question, you answer it. But then when you give them the answer, they don't do it. You know, they want you to do it.
Or maybe it's not the answer that they was actually looking for.
Not the answer we're looking for, or they want, most people want you to do, it's like in the church. People come and they get comfortable or relax in the church and all that, and they want the church to do everything for them, you know.
Well,
and to, you know, about prayer and all that, when we teach them that they need to pray,
yeah,
you know. and they need to read their Bible, and they need to come to church, you know.
But-
and we give them the solutions, but you know, it's up to them if they're going to.
Yeah,
follow it or not.
but that's what I mean. Like that's part of the answer, but that's not the complete answer. The
Right.
the thing that I mean more of is when they come and say, okay, how much should I pray? Do I
Right.
need to be praying 15 minutes, 30 minutes, an
Yeah.
hour? How much should I be praying? How
Yeah.
much should I be reading my Bible? Should I read a chapter? Should I read 20 chapters?
Yeah.
And I'll put it on the biggest ones.
Yeah.
Like if people come and talk to me, like, oh, how much should I give of my tithes and offering? Everyone wants you to give a percentage. Now, if you ask me you should give tithes and offering, I'm going to tell you yes. You ask me how much, I'm going to say that's where you have to pray about it. That's where you have to pray about it. And that's a hard answer for people to take because guess what? They'd rather someone else give them the answer because guess what? If you tell them 5%, 10%, whatever you tell them, and then they come back and things don't turn out the way they wanted to, they're like, well, you told me to do this and it didn't work out this way. And the thing is, again, that's where the relationship with God has to be there. Like, where, as a church and as Paul points out here, his whole thing is to guide people back to Christ. Jesus was guiding people back to Christ. Christ is the answer. Now, from all those answers, everything falls through. Now, again, like I said, you can give guidance, you can give direction and stuff, but at the end of the day, that person has to make the decision. Like, yeah, we tell people you should pray, you should come to church. And they say, well, how often should I come to church? That's really between you and God. Like, I can't tell you, you know, you should be at church every single day. And I can't tell you that you should be there once a week or once a month. That's between you and God. I can tell you the more often you're there, the better off it is. But if you're going to come grumbling because I told you have to be here every week, well, that's not going to help you.
Yeah, right.
You know,
And just don't come.
And that's the whole thing of the relationship
Don't
with
grumble.
God. And that's where I think we've become so lazy with our faith that we'd rather have. I mean, I know I'm going to maybe give a hot take or maybe I guess that's what they call it now, a hot take, a controversial thing.
Oh,
I know most Protestants are not going to want to agree, but in all honesty, a lot of Protestant non-denominational or whatever churches you want to call them in the U.S., in essence, they've made pastors their pope.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, no, I can agree with that.
And they'll criticize
100%
the
agree with
Catholics about how they look at the Pope, but they'll make their pastors the same way.
Yep.
And that's never the way the relationship was supposed to be. Like, if you look at it, Paul would give, like, if it was a firm example, like, you know, you read in Paul's letters, he's very firm about, hey, you probably shouldn't have married your stepmom, or you shouldn't be having a relationship with your stepmom. You know, Paul makes that very clear in Corinthians, right? Like, hey, there's these two people, there's sin going on, you guys are allowing it for whatever reason. He calls it directly out. That's a specific scenario. But when it comes to other things, Paul talks about, okay, now you have to learn how to build that relationship with Christ. That was the whole point of Christ dying on the cross, was to allow us to have that closeness with God again, so that we have that relationship, so that we're seeking him. And just like he was giving Adam and Eve, like I believe he was giving Adam and Eve guidance every single day on how to live as a human being, how to live with him. Because again, and I've always found this interesting, when Adam and Eve were created, I don't know at what age they were created. I don't know if they were full 30-year-old people, or they were 20-year-old people, or they were teenagers, what age they were.
Yeah.
But whatever age they were, everything was brand new to them. They're still like an infant's mind. And when they look at it, like they're having to learn, okay, this is what I'm supposed to do, this is what I'm not supposed to do, this is how you have a relationship, you know. And so I think you see that growing. I think that's where sometimes we lack that relationship, because we're so reliant on our pastors, our churches, our things to give us the answers instead of going to Christ. And again, by give us the answers, I mean specific. You know, we're going to give answers. I mean, that's the whole thing. Even like here, we're learning, we're giving answers, we're guiding. But if off of this one preaching, you make a life-changing decision that you haven't sought the Lord on, like that's not what it's meant, right? If this teaching, you take this and you're like, okay, I'm going to go make this huge life decision, but I haven't prayed and sought the Lord about it. But because we said something,
Yeah.
That's not the way it should be. You should take what we said and say, okay, you know what, I'm going to go seek the Lord. I'm going to go get his guidance. I'm going to go, and then the Lord's going to direct you.
And,
I mean, because
I believe that you're right. Where in Christianity, what is it, Pentecostals or non-denominational, whatever, we do make the pastors and evangelists, not the Pope, we make them gods
Yeah.
sometimes.
Yeah.
But at the same time, like you said, you can't make your whole life on that one statement.
Yeah.
Because then people say, oh, okay, then I'm not going to follow men. I'm just
Yeah.
going to follow God. When God
I've heard that before.
When God puts men, women to help us lead.
Yeah.
We lead them
Yeah.
to Christ. Like I was teaching Wednesday about that, and I told them, look, Paul made a statement too, because Paul said, follow me.
as I follow Christ.
He said, as I follow Christ.
Yes.
See? In other words, as long as I'm following Christ, you follow me.
Yeah.
And if I'm not following Christ, then don't follow me. Because at the same time, we are examples. We're not God. We can only give the guidance. We can only give the, what the Bible says. Then it's up to the person where his faith is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because
Well,
their
but
faith
that's where
might not be strong.
But that's where I head with.
No,
I get what you're saying, and I mean, we're gonna spend all day splitting hairs on it. But to me, at that point, that's where, to me, it's like there's a piece of a salvational piece, and then there's a piece of an organizational, right? As leading the organization, there's certain decisions we're gonna make that has nothing to do with your personal relationship with God. That has to do with the organizational focus and what we're trying to do. And if you truly are saying, okay, I only believe God and I don't believe any man, then what I tell that person is, God bless you and move on.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not gonna beg you. Like, maybe I'm a different guy. I'm gonna say, God bless you. Sounds like you probably should start your own church, or you're gonna be the pastor of your family, and God bless you. Go do your thing. Like, that's the way I look at it. Like, I don't look at it as like I'm gonna spend 20 hours trying to convince you otherwise. If that's where your heart's at, then that's where your heart's at.
No, I feel the same way. I'm not going to fight somebody that wants to believe differently. If they think that's what God is telling them, well, that's what they're telling them.
Yeah.
And
I think that's where you start, again, that's where the relationship with God starts growing, because then God's going to send men and women in your life who are going to teach you who you have to submit under and things like that. Those are two different things. But even any person that you submit under or whatever in an organization, the one thing they cannot do for you is have that personal relationship with God for you. And that's your own ownership of that. And that's your own. And so when I'm talking about it more from a personal relationship with God, not from an organizational standpoint.
Right.
Because when you go to an organizational standpoint, we're going to agree to disagree and disagree to agree on things. And you kind of head that way. Because if you look at it, most of Paul's disciples disagreed with him going to Rome. They wanted him to stay in Asia Minor and keep ministering there. They didn't want him to go to Jerusalem because they knew he had a prophecy. Remember, there was a young girl that had a prophecy. There had been many visions that was happening before this, and they begged Paul not to go. They didn't want him to go. But Paul went anyways, and that's a personal relationship decision, not an organizational decision. And so you have to kind of, and that's one of the hardest things in Christianity, because we try to generalize things as much as possible, and that's human being. That's not.
But in this chapter, you notice, Paul had a reason why he wanted to be led this way.
Yeah, because they was lying on him.
You see,
and he was stating the facts.
See verse 1 and 2?
Yeah.
Paul had a reason why he wanted to be there with
Agrippa.
right in front of Agrippa.
Yeah. Agrippa.
Because if you see the first verse says, then King Agrippa said to Paul, you are permitted to speak for yourself. So Paul stretched out his hand and answered for himself. That means they weren't really allowing him to speak.
No.
Because here he's telling them, speak for yourself.
I wouldn't. I would. I mean, go ahead.
Yeah, and then look at verse 2. It says, I think myself happy, King Agrippa, because today I shall answer for myself, before you concerning all the things of which I am accused by the Jews. You see?
I mean, I wouldn't say they weren't allowing him to speak because he's speaking the same story he spoke to Felix.
Right.
And he's speaking the same story that he spoke to the guy
Yeah,
after
the
Felix.
same exact story.
So, but I think he's being formal here. But I agree,
Right.
I agree also that Paul had a reasoning for this. Paul's ministering to people that wouldn't have normally been ministered to.
right.
Like Paul's
I
setting.
think that was his motive all
But
along.
Felix wasn't a Jew, was he?
So
I don't remember if Felix, but he was over the Jews.
Okay.
So Felix, it was Felix, and then I can't remember who was after Felix, or is it Felix that came after somebody? I'm trying to remember where he said it, who he's talking to, because King Agrippa came to visit, but he's
Festus.
is it but there was
No.
Felix, and then there was someone else after him. I'm trying to find where King Agrippa says.
Well, the point is, I don't know if
Oh, Festus.
Yeah,
Yeah,
who was
so-
letting him talk or not. But it looks like the Jews were accused. It doesn't look like it. They were accusing
They
him
were,
of a lot
yeah.
of stuff.
Well, they've
see.
been so again, if we go through the chapters,
they've
they've
been
been
accusing
accusing them, but they're accusing them of breaking their laws.
Right.
But they're trying to have the Romans take it. One, because they really don't have enough to kill him, so they want the Romans to do it. And then secondly, they're doing what they did with Jesus. They don't want their hands dirty in
Right.
killing
They want
another
somebody
Jew.
else to do their dirty work.
But the problem they didn't know is that Paul was also a Roman
Right.
citizen.
Yeah,
So
they
now
didn't know
that
that.
created a new thing.
Yeah.
But where I think Paul's using this is, again, he's trying to minister. I believe this opened up the doors for him to minister to people that wouldn't have normally listened. And to your point, Felix and what was the other guy?
Festus.
Festus. I don't think they were Jewish, but they ruled over the Jews, so they knew the Jewish customs. And remember, Festus, his whole thing was he was willing to put him in prison or kill him or do something to please the Jews.
Right.
But the problem is, again, once Paul states his Roman citizenship, now you have an issue, and so you see this happening. And to your point in verse 2, he says, I think myself happy, King Agrippa, because today I shall answer for myself before you concerning all the things of which I am accused by the Jews, especially because you are an expert in all customs and questions which have to do with the Jews. Therefore, I beg you to hear me patiently. And so King Agrippa's aware of the Jews. He knows them. He knows their customs. So this is not someone that's... But what I find interesting is he says... I think it's in verse 6. He states that, they've known him since he was young. He was a Pharisee. But verse 6, he says, and now I stand and I am judged for the hope of the promise made by God to our fathers. To this promise our 12 tribes earnestly serving God night and day hope to attain. For the hope's sake, King Agrippa, I am accused by the Jews. Why should it be thought incredible by you that God raised the dead? And verse 9, indeed, I myself thought I must do many things contrary to the name of Jesus of Nazareth. This I also did in Jerusalem, and many of the saints I shut up in prison, having received authority from the chief priests. And when they were put to death, I cast my vote against them. And I punished them often in every synagogue and compelled them to blaspheme. And being exceedingly enraged against them, I persecuted them even to foreign cities. But I think what's interesting here is this whole thing of verse 6 through 8. Paul's setting up what he understands the gospel to believe and what Jesus is preaching, which is the gospel was the Messiah was coming to save the world. Mm-hmm. And he spins it in a way, because remember, the Jews believe in the Messiah. They just didn't believe Jesus was the Messiah. Because the way they saw their Messiah coming in was the Messiah was going to come and free the Jews from an empire, and that they were going to rule the world. And Jesus coming in and not freeing them from the Roman citizens, and coming in as a man who had 12 devout followers, and then he had other followers as well, but 12 main disciples and then a multitude of followers, but did not go up against the Roman Empire and was going to be killed by the Roman Empire. And they saw that as something, again, Jesus flipped we always have to remember Jesus was a Jew and he hadn't changed the Judaism part of it. the way the Jews saw the Messiah coming was it was going to be someone that empowered all the Pharisees and everything. Like they were going to be his right hands because they followed the law the closest.
Right.
Jesus came and said, you guys have it so wrong that you guys are upside down. Like you guys will not be the ones leading people.
Right.
And that's not what
You're
they
gonna be
wanted to hear.
serving people. Right.
And what makes it interesting is that the Jews never saw their Messiah being raised from the dead. They saw their Messiah never being able to die.
Right.
And now you have a new gospel through Jesus, and you have Paul who's confirming this in that, look, our Messiah is so strong that God rose him from the dead.
And that's what I mean. The resurrection from the Jews, Paul couldn't talk to them. They weren't listening. They weren't going to listen. You see? And so he went through the court site, through the Roman Empire, because I guess he knew that they would listen because they're he was.
I think that was. I don't know. I think that was strategic, man. I think he did
Well,
that.
but
I think that
that's
was.
what I
It was.
mean,
It was
because-
intentional. He wanted
Yeah.
to do that.
Well,
No, that's what I mean. Because
You know what I
he
mean?
knew that the Jews weren't going to allow him.
Yeah.
Because the resurrections, because a couple of chapters
And-
back, we read that they were following Paul everywhere.
Oh yeah, yeah. Everywhere he
And
went, they
were
was trying to
always
follow
telling,
him.
It's like today, you see protest, whichever side of
Yeah.
the protest that they're protesting, they don't allow the other side speak or nothing. They start shouting and all that, and because
Well-
they don't give them the chance.
well,
I mean-
the thing there is, again, when you look at the Jewish religion of that time, there was there was a lot more, but there's two major factions, the Sadducees and the Pharisees.
right.
I don't remember which ones. I think the Pharisees believed in resurrection. The Sadducees did not.
Yeah.
That's where Paul got them divided in the earlier chapters. The one thing they both agreed on was that Jesus wasn't the Messiah.
Yeah.
You see, when Paul focuses on the resurrection or the raising of the dead, they're gonna have disagreements. Where they were both aligned is they did not want Jesus to be recognized as the Messiah, and that's what actually brought them together to go after Paul. And what you see here is Paul's bringing to light of what's going on. I'm going to jump to verse 14, and he's giving his incident of what happened on the road to Damascus, and he says that when we all had fallen to the ground, I heard a voice speaking to me and saying in the Hebrew language, Saul, Saul, why are you persecuting me? It is hard for you to kick against the goal. It's hard for you to kick against the goads. So I said, who are you, Lord? And he said, I am Jesus whom you are persecuting. But rise and stand on your feet, for I have appeared to you for this purpose, to make you a minister and witness both of the things which you have seen and of the things which I will yet reveal to you. I will deliver you from the Jewish people as well as from the Gentiles to whom I now send you, to open their eyes in order to turn them from darkness to light and from the power of Satan to God, that they may receive forgiveness of sins and an inheritance among those who are sanctified by faith in me. And so Paul's giving his testimony here. And his whole thing is now he's realizing Jesus is the Messiah. And not just on top of that, but now the other piece that really rubs the Jews mad is that last part. That salvation and a relationship with God and all of that comes through Christ who died on the cross. And that wipes out a lot of stuff the Jews believed in. Not that it wipes out, but that's what they feared it wiped out. Paul later explains that it fulfilled the law, but what they were worried is the way they looked at it was that the law was supposed to build their relationship with God. It was through the law they got closer to God. Paul comes and tells them the law will never get you close to God. That was never the purpose of the law, and that's never going to be the purpose. The whole point of the law was to show us that we could never get that close to God. The law in itself was perfect. It was human beings. And he starts showing them the heart of the law as Jesus was trying to do. And so you see this change going on.
Yeah, I mean, when you look at this and you think about, we've been talking about Paul and his transformation and, and his journey. The thing that caught me was verse 24, and it says, while Paul was saying this in his defense, Festus said in a loud voice, Paul, you are out of your mind. Your great learning is driving you mad. But Paul said, I am not out of my mind, most excellent Festus, but I utter words of sober truth. For the king knows about these matters, that I speak to him also with confidence, since I am persuaded that none of these things escape his notice, for this has not been done in a corner. And I mean, when you think about like his like I said, Paul's journey, man, like it was coming to a point where he was sharing the gospel of what happened, and people was like, man, you crazy.
Well, it's
Like you don't know what age, you know what I mean? And
well, it's what Paul writes later on, right?
yeah,
So
and if you think about it, like it happens to this day right now still.
well, that's what Paul,
You know what I mean?
Well, that's what Paul writes about. I don't remember in which letter, but he writes, the things of the gospel, the words of salvation, are foolish to those who aren't saved.
Yeah.
And it's because it is from a logical standpoint,
yeah.
it's very ridiculous.
Yeah.
Like our hero dies. Like now you see it in movies,
Yeah.
but in most times, where would you
The
ever
hero
hear
always
of a hero
win.
dying, and that's the heroic, that's the salvation, especially in these olden times. The ones that were seen as heroes were people that were able to keep living, win every war. You didn't claim victory by dying. And that's something new.
Mm-hmm.
And again, now you see it in movies, but this is stolen from the Gospels, right? You see in movies a hero dying for someone.
Mm-hmm.
Go anywhere from The Matrix to Superman to all these other movies where the superhero now dies for everyone to live. That goes back to Christ. But that was not a common theme back then. And so you see this, and to your point, that's why it seems foolish, because you're talking about someone
Somebody
raising
who-
from the dead.
Yeah.
And now there's a forgiveness for our sins
Yeah.
that's been,
Yeah. And
you-
then look, you got to think about it. These were first-hand accounts. These were like eyewitness people saw this happen.
well,
It wasn't like
I think it
you
goes.
could get on your phone, not like no. This people saw this happen, and it was all word of mouth.
And I think you got to look at the two different cultures here, and this is where people always, when you look at the Jewish culture, and you see this, for them it's a weird awakening, because you've been told all this time that the law is what
Yeah.
gets you close to God, and all of a sudden it's this grace and
yeah.
forgiveness, this unconditional
laws.
love that's always been around, but we never accepted. When you go to the Romans and the Greeks who believed a whole bunch of other things, they can't understand that a God would come down and die for us, because their belief, especially in those times of those civilizations that have multiple gods, man was created to serve God. Never in there is there a God made to serve man.
Yeah, correct.
And God is coming down in the form of Jesus saying, I come to serve and not be served.
Correct.
That is an upside
That's
down
crazy.
gospel.
Yeah.
And so that's a hard concept for them to understand. And why is it hard for us to understand it today? It's the same reasoning. Most of us have lived in a world, we all have. We all lived in a world where one way or another we have some kind of conditional love. And it's become that way, whether it's in your youth, throughout your time. There was always a condition to the love. And now all of a sudden, you have this God who loves you unconditionally, who forgives you, and you're supposed to believe in that. And you got to have faith in that. And that's hard, because this world tells you get nothing. There's nothing you get for free. There's nothing in this world that you get for free. And yet the gospel is telling us that I have to believe that I get God's love for free. Now, with that love comes other things, but that doesn't earn me God's love, right? The things I do doesn't earn me God's love, but because of God's love, I'm able to do those things. And it's a very weird concept, and that's why I think even to this day we struggle with. In verse 27, it says, King Agrippa, do you believe the prophets? I know that you do believe. Then Agrippa said to Paul, and I find this interesting, you almost persuaded me to become a Christian.
Yeah, right.
And Paul said, I would to God that not only you, but also all who hear me today might become both almost and altogether such as I am, except for these chains. When he had said these things, the king stood up, as well as the governor and Bernice and those who sat with him. And when they had gone aside, they talked amongst themselves, saying, this man is doing nothing deserving of death or chains.
Wow.
Then Agrippa said to Festus, "This man might have been set free if he had not appealed to Caesar."
Wow. Look at this guy's
And-
heart, bro.
But
Look at his
look-
heart.
But to your point and what you were saying earlier, 29 summarizes his whole point here.
Yeah.
He was just hoping that they get almost or they become Christians. Why? Because Paul
was his
understood
heart. Yeah.
Paul understood the planting of the seed. He said Agrippa might not be saved today, but who knows what happens to him later on.
Yeah, and again, that's what I mean. You see, why he was happy, because he knew the law too. He knew that if he went this route, you know, these men were respected even by the Jews.
Yeah.
They couldn't be, you know, like when Paul was preaching on the streets and all that, or houses and all that, and instigators were going. Well, there was no authority to stop them.
Yeah.
But here, they couldn't do that.
But the one
They had to listen.
I think the
you
one
know.
piece that confuses them is that he appealed to Caesar.
Right.
Like that's what they can't understand, and that's what I mean about the part of he's trusting the
But,
Holy Spirit
yeah.
to lead him, because to them they're thinking like, why is he appealing to Caesar? Like he has a case, we can let him go.
And that's where he has a relationship with God.
Yeah.
That's why a lot of churches go through divisions. There's bickering. There's gossip and all that. Because if people do not have a relationship with God, they're not going to understand what God is doing in a church or in a ministry or in their life. You know, because God's sometimes going to send you through a journey or send you somewhere that most people think, what are you doing? You know, that doesn't sound right.
No.
You know, and God sometimes, you know, tells us to do some things that look like they're impossible, but that's the journey He wants us to take.
Yep.
You know, and here like Paul asking to speak to Caesar, you know, they thought that was foolish, but for some reason Paul knew that God was leading them this way,
Yep.
and right there he said it. Even if it leads, you know, you guys to getting saved, you know, to know Christ. That's
Yep.
it.
He was more
You know,
concerned about their
That's
salvation.
it.
Yeah.
You know, and Paul, you know, because Paul had a good relationship with God, and he would allow God to lead him.
Yep.
Because there are a lot of times Paul wanted to go somewhere, and God would tell him, no, you can't.
Yep.
Go this route.
Yep.
You see? And that's where, you know, and going back, some people want us to answer their, okay, what do you think God wants me to do? I don't know. We can help you when God shows you what He wants you to do, you know, give you guidance or whatever. But we cannot tell you what God wants you to do, you know.
Well,
That's
that's
between
what,
you and God.
well, that's what I think, and we'll wrap up
You know,
here.
yeah.
But I think that's where, again, there's a difference between the personal relationship and the ministry.
Right.
And that personal relationship with God, what He has for you in the long run, that's really between you and God. But He will confirm it amongst people. Like you'll always have a confirmation or something.
Yeah.
When it comes to ministry, the one thing that God does make clear, and throughout the Bible, you'll see it, Paul talks about it, there's a discipleship, a mentorship, there's a program where sometimes it's like when you're brand new, like it's good for you to join a ministry. It's good for you to be part of different ministries and things like that, because you don't know what your skill set is. You may not know exactly where you need to be or what God has for you. The problem is people take that and they take it as, okay, this is my God-given calling and that's it. And it's like, no, God's given us a lot of talents. This is just training you to where you can go and where you can be and what God can have you to be. And it may not even be in the ministry you started with, but you got to be open and receiving to it. And I think that's where there's the two differences between the personal relationship and the ministry relationship. And they do combine together, but there's also a piece where, you know, again, one of the things I always look at it is like, if someone truly believes God's calling them somewhere, you'll feel that confirmation with others. But even if you don't, and you truly believe that God's calling you to do something, then you got to go do it and figure it out. And then, you know, people may tell you don't do that or you should or this, but you got to make that decision, because at the end of the day, you can't come back and say, well,
One thing we do try to teach here is the most important thing a person has is their relationship with Christ, relationship with God, not the ministry, you know.
Yeah.
I always tell people when they ask me why I joined the ministry, I tell them because I'm grateful for God. This is what God called me to do, and if He tells me to do something, because I'm grateful for what he's done. I'm going to answer to his, you know. And not because it gets me closer to God or, you know, gives me so many hours of prayer or so many hours. No, that's the relationship you have to have with God.
Yep.
Because if you don't have a relationship with God and you join the ministry, you know what? You're going to burn out.
Yep.
You know,
Well,
you're
that's
going to
what-
get rebellious. You're going to get discouraged because
Yeah.
not everything turns out right.
Yep.
You know, but when you have a relationship with God, you understand. Like Paul. Paul said, "Hey, I'm happy to be here.
Yeah.
Well,
that's
happy
why-
to be in court."
Well, but that's what I mean.
know?
Well, but that's
In
what I mean.
chains. In chains.
But that's what I mean. If you ask the disciples or you ask other people, they probably would have said, "This is not Paul's journey," but this was Paul knew
Yeah.
it was his journey, and that's what I
Right.
mean. It's that personal relationship. Like even in his ministry in his life, you had the times where the disciples sent Paul to certain ways. There's times he went on his own, but it was always this relationship of
Yeah.
again focusing on certain things.
Look, when I watch the Spurs and I watch the Cowboys, I'm a good coach from my couch. You know, I see everything that's wrong that the coach should have done on this. You know, I think Popovich is an idiot, and you know McCarthy shouldn't have called that one play that messed up. You see, but I'm over here on the couch seeing everything and replays. When you're down there on the sidelines, you're just seeing what's going on. You know, you can only, and a lot of Christians are the same way. Instead of getting the relationship with God and let God show them, you know, show them what God's doing in their life. And then if they belong to a church, whichever church, show them what God is doing in that church, you know, and follow the vision. They want to be coaches from the couch,
Okay.
you know.
And with that
that's
charismatic,
just for me.
with that charismatic analogy,
And-
we'll call it a day.
Yeah.
Hit the like and subscribe button.
Like Paul, I'm happy to be able to talk.
Hit the like and subscribe button. Pass it on to others, and we'll be back with you in another chapter. Thanks.
I know that was too much.